Hello, everyone. Mike from Mike's Gaming Gala here. And I was going to do this outside in my backyard and kind of have an impromptu wax poetic out there, but it is hot as Hades today. So I'm in the I'm in my office and we're going to chat about this here. So Atari has announced a partnership with Namco, or I guess Bandai now owns the Pac-Man license, but they are releasing a Pac-Man 2600 Plus Special Edition. And it comes complete with a Pac-Man style controller, and you can purchase extra controllers in the colors of all the ghosts. And I've had a couple people ask me what I think about this, especially considering that last year I released a video called Atari Thinks We're Dumb and We Kinda Are. And that was about the 7800 Plus. It might surprise you that I really don't have any problem with this release. The reason I had misgivings about the 7800 Plus announcement wasn't because it's the same thing in a different shell. Yes, there was the addition of a pause button and wireless controllers, um, but it was essentially the same thing. It does the same thing. My problem with it was primarily that at the time, at least of the announcement, there was still not an official patch for the Atari 2600 Plus that fixed the not insignificant issues that it had. Uh, some compatibility issues, although I would consider that minor. With a system like this, obviously, you're going to have compatibility issues. Um, but primarily with like the difficulty switches being reversed and the buttons not working properly for 7800 mode. So now there is an official patch, although it is only available to people with access to a PC. If you are a Mac user or a Linux user, you're still out of luck. But there is an official patch, and I imagine most people at least maybe know somebody. You can invite somebody over with their laptop and update your system there. Um, and so now that there is that patch, I don't have a problem if they wanted to make a Vader Plus, if they wanted to make a Four Switch Plus or a Junior Plus, they can continue to do that. That's no problem as long as they're profitable. And I do think they're going to make the this Pac-Man version of the console is going to make them some money. It's a good partnership. Pac-Man, for better or worse, is iconic on the 2600. I actually like the original game, but that was my introduction to Pac-Man. If I had been a big Pac-Man fan in the arcade and then got that port, I can understand why people are very upset about that port. But yeah, I don't have an issue with this console. What I have some, I wouldn't even say misgivings, but worries about is where Atari is going to go in the future with this type of thing. Um, this is 3 years in a row now that we've basically just gotten the same system in a different package. And if they continue to do that and not produce other hardware that Atari fans want, like a Jaguar Plus or a Lynx Plus or a 5200 Plus or even an Intellivision Plus. Obviously, Atari owns the Intellivision license now. So if this is okay, because I do believe it's the only hardware they're announcing this year. I could be wrong on that. I could be wrong on all of this. Um, this is a purely my opinions and my thoughts video. But if they continue to just release new versions, even with upgrades to the 2600 plus slash 7800 plus line, systems that only play 2600 and 7800 games, it's going to get old really quick. I have specifically avoided watching other people's videos about this so that my opinions can be my own. But I have heard people liken it to the Atari flashback model. And there was what, like 10, 12 of those. And it was just the same thing over and over and over and over again. And eventually they just all ended up in the trash. Um, There are people that obviously still use them and collected them, but every iteration of it is going to be less and less and less profitable because in reality, it is just the same thing over and over and over again. Um, Now, obviously, the plus systems, like the build quality is fantastic. They feel good, they look good. They are definitely better hardware than the flashback. But again, if it's that model of, okay, the only hardware actually coming from Atari year after year is another version of the same thing, that's a bad future for them. That is going to eventually become not profitable. Although, as a big Space Invaders fan, if they made a deal with Taito and released a Invaders 2600 plus, I'd probably have to pick that up. Um, so they do know what they're doing. It's good marketing. I think it's a good idea. I just really hope that next year there is a new plus system, something that they can add to the overall plus library aside from just 2600 and 7800. I know 5200 is a tall order. I would love one, but there are a lot of challenges, particularly with the controller. Is how do we do that and make it profitable? Because obviously 5200 is much smaller, um, has a much smaller interest level than the other systems. But also, how do we uh, produce it in a way that everybody's going to be happy? Because if, like, honestly, the way to play 5200 is with a working original controller. But those controllers had a lot of issues. So, do you make a new controller? Do you make it center better, the joystick center better? A lot of different questions there. Jaguar Plus, I think, makes a lot of sense. Again, it's a smaller interest level, but it gets a lot more press than the 5200. It has a simpler controller to replicate, and it currently original hardware is so expensive, it just keeps people from being able to get into the Jaguar. And so a Jaguar Plus, if it came out at 150 bucks, I think would be a welcome addition to Atari's hardware lineup because it would mean you no longer have to spend 500 for an original system. Uh, Even better if it had a CD drive. I sincerely doubt that would ever happen coming from Atari, but you never know. One thing that I do think Atari needs to get on board with, and I will hammer home every single damn time I talk about Atari, you need to put SD card slots that you can play ROMs off of on your systems. Here's my reasoning. I understand why Atari doesn't. Atari is in the business of selling these carts, whether it be re-releases of old games or official releases of existing homebrew games. Eventually, they might get into a situation where they're actually having new homebrew games published, although I think they'll do that mostly through Atari Age. But a lot of their releases, like Caverns of Mars, was an existing homebrew from Champ Games, and they, uh, I forget what the original was called now, Canyons of Mars or something like that. But it's a re-release with the name change. But the homebrew community is moving very much into the ROM space, particularly with Atari, but also with Intellivision and ColecoVision and other platforms. A lot of people just don't want to have a ton of cartridges anymore. People have limited space, people have limited funds. So if you could spend $60 on a new Atari game or spend $15 on the ROM and be able to play it just the same, a lot of people would probably choose the ROM. That said, I don't think adding an SD card slot to your systems is going to cost you. Obviously, it'll cost you slightly more to make the system. Just add that cost to the system. But I don't think it's going to cripple your cartridge selling business. People who weren't going to buy the cartridge anyway might buy a ROM. And people who are going to pirate the ROMs for these games uh, were never going to buy your cartridge in the first place. I imagine that Champ Games, who sells complete in box copies of their games as well as ROM copies, and you can get a combo where you get a discount if you buy both. A lot of people are buying both because then you can have one that you can keep pristine on the shelf and you never have to open because in reality we're collectors, and you can play the game. And then due to that, Champ Games makes an extra 10-15 bucks off of every purchase with little to no added effort. And Atari could do the same thing. Not to mention that if in the future we got something like a Jaguar Plus, uh, or Jaguar games are expensive, or um, CD games you could get as ROMs, and then you can play them without having to have some kind of CD add-on, or without Atari having to add a CD element to its system. I think I think that would be profitable for them because now even if you take like a 10% hit on your cartridge sales, you are going to sell so many more systems because they're more versatile. People can now use your systems however they want. They can play ROMs, they can play cartridges, uh, they can. And one of the reasons, like, I actually use my Retron 77 more than I use my Atari 2600 Plus. Why is that? The 2600 Plus is a better system in pretty much every regard. But the Retron 77 lets me play ROMs, which means I bypass the ROM dumper because how these systems work, it's software emulation. It's running Stella, and then it has a ROM dumper that pulls the ROM off of your cart and then opens it in the emulator. Well, the point of failure for games that aren't compatible 99.9% of the time is not the emulator. Stella is a damn near perfect emulator, but that ROM dumper, if there's anything special about the ROM, if there's a ROM that then points to another ROM, like with multi-carts and stuff like that, it can't pull the ROM off the cart, and therefore you can't play your game. But if you have an SD card and you're able to just open ROMs from the SD card, then you can do that. And the Retron 77 does that. The 2600 Plus does not. So I really think Atari needs to get on that train. I think they would sell a lot more consoles. And yes, I would welcome yet another version of the 2600 Plus that had an SD card slot. It would make things a lot easier for me, especially because I record a lot of footage. And it's nice to play on hardware that I can have like the original joystick and not have to emulate on my computer with an Xbox controller. So I really hope that this is kind of a gap year for them as they work towards something bigger. Obviously, as a huge Intellivision fan, I would love an Intellivision Plus. Don't know if that'll come. I hope it will. I would love a Jaguar Plus. I will buy pretty much every Plus system you put out if you put them out. And however, I'm not buying the Pac-Man Plus. It's just, to me, I have the 7800 Plus, I have the 2600 Plus. I don't need the same thing again. I don't have a problem with it. If you're a big Pac-Man fan and you ordered it and you're excited, that's fantastic. And if you don't have any of the Plus systems and Pac-Man is what pushed you kind of over the line of I'm going to buy one now, great. The Plus systems are fantastic. I just don't want to see Atari doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, like the flashback. So I have no problem with it. If you're looking forward to it, that's fantastic. As for me personally, I'm going to pass on this one and hope that next year we get something with a little more substance. If you are interested to participate live in a conversation of not only the Pac-Man Plus, but everything that Atari's been doing lately, their new games, what we think they're going to be doing in the future. We have a podcast this Tuesday, both on this channel, Mike's Gaming Gala, and on the Retro Bliss Gaming channel. It is at 8 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday night, and we will be talking about everything Atari. I would absolutely love if you guys came and chimed in. We interact with the chat a lot. We talk about we'll talk about everything Atari. We have special guest Ballistic Coffee Boy on there, and ask your questions in the comments there. Make your thoughts known, and of course, comment here. When I made my 7800 plus video, there were plenty of people who were angry about the 7800 plus, and there were plenty of people who were angry at me because I wasn't psyched about it. So I have no problem. Whatever your opinion is, I want to hear it. Atari is a great company. I love a lot of what they've been doing. I have no problem with this. Like I said, they can make a million different versions of it, but do that in addition to making something else. I'm not too worried right now. Next year, if the only announcement of hardware is another version of the 2600 plus, now my tone's going to be a lot different. I'm going to be pretty frustrated. They can announce one, but announce it with something else. Anyhow, that is my thoughts. I appreciate you guys listening to me ramble, and absolutely tune in on Tuesday, and we'll talk more Atari then. Thanks, guys. See you later.